Today we're going to be talking about fats. Here are our learning targets. We need to be able to describe the function, the building blocks, and the structure of fats. We're going to learn about different types of fats: saturated, polyunsaturated, monounsaturated, and saturated fats. And then we're going to learn how we can test for fats. So if you don't have your notebook out, go ahead and grab it. Your title for today is going to be fats. In that picture there, you can see some foods that have fats in them. We'll talk about those in a little bit. Take a second and look at these pictures. Tell me, what letters, elements from the periodic table are found in fats in all of these pictures? Did you say C, H, and O? If you did, you were correct. Okay, most of the time they contain C, H, and O. This picture here doesn't actually have an O in it, but most of them do contain C, H, and O. C stands for carbon, H for hydrogen, and O for oxygen. The building blocks of fats. Okay, we've got a couple different building blocks. So the first one is glycerol. And then to that, we add 3 fatty acids here. So 1 glycerol plus 3 fatty acids equals a fat. You can see that glycerol here and the 3 fatty acids. Sometimes we say that this kind of looks like a letter E because of those 3 fatty acids there. We'll see on the next slide that sometimes fats don't always take this structure, but a lot of times they do. So fats are typically E-shaped. We talked about that. So we can see here like a letter E, or on this one, letter E. Sometimes they don't really look like this E shape and they'll just be like one long chain, like one fatty acid. But either way, they're different from carbohydrates because carbohydrates are a hexagon shape. So even though fats and carbohydrates have the same letters, C's, H's, and O's, the difference here is in their structure or their shape. So let's take a look at these pictures. Can you tell me which one of these molecules, A, B, C, or D, is the fat? Hopefully you said letter B here. So remember, fats only have C, H, and O, and they're typically an E or a long chain. So if we look at this molecule, this had an N, so that can't be a fat. This one down here has CHO, but this is a hexagon. So this is going to be our carbohydrate. Over here, it doesn't have a C, it's got a P, so it doesn't have the right letters. It doesn't have CHO, C-H-O. Let's do another one. Which one of these is a fat? A, B, C, or D? Hopefully you said letter A. This is our E shape, right? And it's got CHO. This one over here, this is not an E shape or a long chain, it's a hexagon. So this is going to be our carbohydrate. This is also going to be a carbohydrate. So it's got CHO, but it's a hexagon. Over here, this has an N, C-H-O-N, so this one cannot be a fat. All right, so what are fats used for? They're used for a variety of different things. They're used for cell membranes. Remember we talked about phospholipids? A lipid is a fat. Remember we said a phosphorus with a fat. And a phospholipid had a head and 2 tails, right? So in order for us to make cell membranes for all the trillions of cells in our body, we need fats. They're also used for protecting your organs. They provide kind of like a little layer of cushion so that your organs are protected. They're used for insulating. Animals that live in the Arctic, okay, or in cooler waters or cooler temperatures, say a penguin or a whale, they've got blubber or they've got fat, and that helps insulate them. You can kind of see this with people around you. So people who are very, very thin and have very little body fat, they get cold really easily. That's because they don't have as much insulation. People who have more fat and maybe are larger typically get warmer easier because they have more insulation. In your body, fats are also used for storing energy, okay? So if we think back to the caveman times, okay, normally they didn't know when they were going to get their next meal. So they would go out and they would hunt, they would eat as much as they could, and any of that extra food would be stored as fat. Okay, similar to today. If you eat a lot of extra food, some of that extra, those extra calories from that food will be stored as fat. And the reason your body stores them is because it says, hey, we don't know, maybe we might need it later on. What if we don't know when our next meal is going to be? So it's kind of an evolutionary advantage from back in those caveman days, right, where they didn't know when their next meal was going to come. So anything extra they would just store as fat in their body. Take a look at this picture. Go ahead and list 2 foods that you see that contain fats here. So we've got a variety of different foods here. They're found in oils, so things like canola oil, corn oil, vegetable oil, olive oil. They're found in nuts, so pecans and walnuts and peanuts. Found in meat and fish, okay? You'll also see avocado here. So these are just some different examples of foods that contain fats. They're also found in fried foods, right? So French fries and hamburgers as well. So now we've got to talk about good fats and bad fats, okay? Here's what I need you to write down from this slide. Just this box. You don't need to draw the circles or anything. What you need to know is that there's 2 different types of cholesterol. What's cholesterol? It's a molecule, okay? It's a molecule that your body needs for lots of different things, but some of it's good, some of it's bad. You can kind of think of cholesterol as fat. It's a fat type molecule. So we have something called HDL cholesterol. Okay, you don't need to know what the HDL stands for. It's high density lipoprotein, but you don't need to know that. So HDL cholesterol, this is good cholesterol. What this good cholesterol does is it helps clean out your arteries. Okay, so arteries are your blood vessels, right? It helps keep them clean. The LDL cholesterol is the bad cholesterol. It causes all of this cholesterol and plaque to build up in your arteries, which then causes them to become narrowed. And this can cause problems with heart attack or stroke. This is basically how we get different types of those heart conditions or heart diseases. So we've got good cholesterol, the HDL, and bad cholesterol. And we're going to talk about how fats influence these types of cholesterol. So here are some different types of fats we have. Okay, I'm going to start with the good, and we're going to go to the bad. So we have something called monounsaturated fat. Okay, mono means one. So it means there's one spot here where it doesn't have its full hydrogens. It's not saturated with hydrogens. You don't need to know the structure. You don't need to know about this picture here. What you do need to know is that it decreases your LDL. Okay, so remember, this is the bad cholesterol. So if it decreases that, that's good. It decreases the bad and it increases the good. Okay, so this is a really good fat to have because it helps us keep our arteries healthy while also getting rid of the bad cholesterol. So this monounsaturated fat can be found in olive oil and canola oil. Okay, so monounsaturated fat, it's a good fat. Let's talk about an okay fat, polyunsaturated fat. Poly, like polysaccharide, means many. So there's many spots here where we don't have our full H's, where we don't have all of our H's there, right? Like here and here. This is an okay fat because it decreases the bad stuff, decreases the bad guys, but it also decreases the good guys. So it's okay, all right? An example of this would be corn oil. Corn oil is used in a lot of processed foods. It's used sometimes to fry foods as well, but we've got corn oil. So this is an okay fat. Now we're going to get into some not so good fats, okay? So saturated fat. Saturated means it's full. So see here, it's full of hydrogens, okay? So saturated fat is bad because it increases the bad cholesterol, the bad LDL, that's going to cause your arteries to kind of accumulate some of that plaque and cholesterol. It might cause them to narrow. Now, let me give you a disclosure here. Eating this type of fat, okay, is not going to cause you to get heart disease unless you're eating lots and lots of it, okay? So having butter, having meat is fine, okay? But putting butter on every single thing and going through a stick of butter a day, yeah, that's probably going to give you some problems in the future, okay? So this comes from animal fat, okay? So the butter, right? Butter is made from cow's milk, right? So that's fat that's coming from an animal. And then like red meat, that's fatty here, right? Like the white fat on there. So this is bad because it causes the LDLs to increase. It narrows your arteries. And lastly, the worst type of fat that you could have is something called trans fat, okay? We don't see as trans fat as much anymore because in the 2000s, they went through and they removed it from a lot of packaged goods. The reason trans fat is bad is because it increases the bad guys, the LDLs, but it also decreases the good guys. So it's getting rid of the good guys and it's causing the bad guys to increase. So trans fat used to be in a lot of packaged stuff. So, packaged sandwich crackers, packaged, kind of like Twinkies or honey buns, those types of things. They've gotten rid of a lot of it in the packaged foods, okay? So if you look at your labels, you won't find as much trans fat anymore. But the one place that's still in is a lot of our fried foods. So if you get a fried if you get a hamburger, typically they fry those at fast food places. If you get French fries, you're going to find trans fat in that. Okay, you can find a tiny bit in peanuts, but generally it's our fried foods or donuts, that kind of thing. So trans fat are the worst. Okay, monounsaturated are the best. All right. Lastly, how do we test for fats? It's a really scientific test. You need to write this down, okay? It's a paper test. When you got French fries or you get a hamburger, you might notice that if it comes wrapped in a wrapper, that wrapper looks shiny or a little greasy. Well, that's the grease or the fat. So we use this when we're talking about how we test for fats. We get out a piece of paper, or sometimes we use like a brown paper bag. And what we do is we take some of that food and we wipe it on the paper, and then we let it dry. So any of the water is going to evaporate in there. Any of the oil doesn't evaporate. So if we hold it up to the light, we should be able to kind of see through it, have a greasy mark. So you see here, we've got cooking oil, we can see through it. And if there's no fat, like water doesn't have any fat, we won't really see a mark, okay? So last thing here, let's look at a scenario. Elsa wipes some food on a paper bag and holds it up to the light. Which food has the most fat? Okay, so she's got water, butter, apple, milk, and tofu. Okay, so go ahead and answer. Did you say butter? Hopefully you did, because this has the most greasy see-through mark, okay? Tofu kind of has some, and I think she didn't let these dry completely because water and apple, you can still kind of see a little bit of that wet mark, but those don't have fats. But long story short here, butter is going to have the most fat.